Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at some of the tools that I use to DM. I'm not the world's best DM, I'm not even close, but it is something that I do, that I enjoy, that is fun, so that's why I'd like to share it with you. So what we're seeing on screen right now is Donjon. It is a series of tools used to help DMs generate their world, their adventure, what have you. The bit of it we're taking a look at now is the random dungeon generator for D&D 5th edition. Now, as soon as you load it up, you're going to get something that looks a bit like this. It's going to have a randomly generated dungeon name. It's going to start out with what it thinks are probably the best presets, dungeon level of 1, so for level 1 characters, party size of 4, as in 4 characters, and then a motif. That's the first thing we're going to touch. You've got no specific motif: abandon, aberrant, giant, undead, vermin, aquatic, desert, underdark, arcane, fire, cold, abyssal, and infernal. So just pick one of those, whatever matches your setting. Set the level to the level of your characters. Set the party size to your party size. Other things to note here, we've got the random seed, also randomly generated every time you load a new one of these pages. If you ever want to go back and adjust any of this to regenerate your dungeon, say you generated one, you liked it, your character's leveled up, it's no longer appropriate, make sure you keep the seed, the size, the layout, and all of the other settings. So we're just going to let it stay on this random seed for now. We're going to generate a medium dungeon. Dungeon layout, I like the box. I like the box. The egress along the outside. So if you want it to connect up to many others, so you want to tile them, there's a tiling option. There's many, so a bunch of different ways to get in, and you can see the preview change as we change these settings. So you've got the stairs that come and go, you've got a couple of doors from outside that comes in, so you can generate whatever makes the most sense for your dungeon. Next up, we've got the room layout, which is scattered. So you've got various size in various hallway lengths. Room size of medium. I don't really see any reason for anything larger than medium in most of my gameplay. Medium is plenty. Polymorph rooms. That right there is the circles. And I know you saw a couple of polygonal shapes, so like polygons, like pentagons and whatnot. So for this, we're going to say no, because rooms that are a non-rectangular shape definitely slow down the process that we're going to go through today. Doors, standard. This is flavor, and this is for like actual gameplay. So no doors. There's not going to be any doors. Basic doors are just going to be a regular old door. Secure, you're going to have a lot more things that are locked. Standard is going to be a mix of locked and stuck and trapped. And then death trap is going to be, well, exactly what it sounds like, a death trap. We're just going to leave it on standard. For corridors, I like labyrinth because it keeps people moving in a specific direction, but you can choose whatever works best for you. Remove dead ends. So up here on the top side of the map, top left-hand corner, you've got a couple of hallways that go nowhere. So you can remove all the dead ends, and you no longer have dead ends, right? So I like some, just because not every location someone may want to visit is going to be properly constructed. Not everything's going to go somewhere. If your dungeon is like the vermin motif or like ruins, then pathways collapse, right? Stairs. If you want stairs in your dungeon that go places, this will randomly place a few. For the map style, this is really just what it looks like. So I can change it to whatever. For what we're doing, standard is going to be fine. And grid. I only ever really work in the square grid, so that's what I'm going to suggest here. So let's hit construct dungeon. It's going to generate this image, and it's got a key for what is what. It's got general information about it. This dungeon was created by a cult of an evil deity as a mine, blah, blah, blah. It tells you information about the walls and the floor, the temperature, the illumination. Moving right along, we've got the corridor features. So if you look up here at the map, see if we can find a letter. Okay, so midway up the dungeon, there's a inn. And if I hover over it here, it'll tell me what that is. It's a teleporter crystal. So if I look down in the key, teleporter crystal, and information on how to disable it and what'll happen if you touch it. Wandering monsters, these aren't actually placed in the rooms. This is something that you as a DM are going to send your player characters. Usually you will roll at a set interval on how often they may encounter one of these wandering monsters or groups of wandering monsters. And then for a typical room, we'll take a look at room 2. It's got a north entry and an east entry. If it's got more than one north entry, they will be numbered. Room features, this is just what's going on in the room, what kind of monsters are in there, and what kind of treasure may be in there. I mean, you're the DM, you get to decide. I find that it's fairly generous in the loot, so I evaluate whether or not it is a good idea to give each item or substitute as necessary. So if we take a look at this ointment, I can go find that ointment, I can find another uncommon, and I can roll on that table, or I can pick something else out that is more appropriate for my group. And then let's move down to the bottom. You got each of these little blocks for each of the rooms. There's going to be like 30 or 40 some odd rooms. And at the very bottom, you've got a download button. So you've got the download map. That is going to be a relatively low resolution map. You've got the player's map that has all of the secrets removed and all of the letters on the floor removed. So you can actually share that with one of the player characters or put it in your virtual tabletop, and it's basically ready to go. But it is just an image. So print scale, this is something we have to download. It is the DM map. So it's got all of the secrets on there, so you don't want to hand that one out to your folks. But with what we're going to do here in just a little bit, you'll see that that's not really an issue. I do also always download the PDF. The PDF has all of the information that is currently on this page. It just doesn't have, like at the very top at the map, it doesn't have the handy-dandy tooltips. So I'm going to do that. I'm also going to go back to settings because this does work. And I'm going to grab a screenshot of this, and this is going to go in the working folder. So when I create a new dungeon, it gets a new named folder. In that folder goes any of the downloads from Donjon and any other related information. So we'll go ahead and move on to the scale portion so that we can bring it into Dungeondraft, which will then allow us to bring it into Foundry. Okay, so we have moved on to GIMP. So GIMP is a Photoshop-like tool. It is open source. It is free. Definitely go get it. Try to learn it. If you already have Photoshop and prefer Photoshop, you can do any of these steps in there. But I'm going to grab that image and drag it in from Donjon we downloaded. And you see it's got all of the secret stuff on there, and it's got all of the letters and stuff. So this is what we're going to scale for bringing into Dungeondraft. And to do so, we're going to go up to the scale tool. See, I've got mine broken out into each individual tool, and a stock brand new install of GIMP will not have that. So if you would like, you can use you can look for it, or you can use the hotkey. The hotkey is Shift S. Make sure the layer that I want to scale is selected. I'm going to click on the image, and this is where things could go wrong. So do not change these pixel values. It is going to cause you a lot of headache, because once you change that, then the scale changes and your pixels per square is different. So we're going to go to %, and we're going to change it to 200%. Now, before I hit enter, before I change input boxes, I needed to go ahead and make sure that this link over here is connected. So this link in the tool is make sure that they scale the exact same on both. So I have scaled it 200%. I hit the scale button, and it only shows a portion of our map, right? So that's a problem. If we zoom out a little bit, we see that the layer is larger than the canvas. And to fix that, we can go to Image, and then Fit Canvas to Layers. And then we're done. We have properly scaled it for bringing into Dungeondraft, so we're going to go to File, and then we are going to Overwrite. I know that sounds a little bit scary, so if you don't want to, you can save it as a different image type, or you can change the name, change the save location, whatever. You already know how to do all of that. I just like to overwrite because I've saved all of the settings from Donjon, and I can recreate this and re-download if at all necessary. So that's going to do it for the GIMP portion. We're going to go ahead and move over to Dungeondraft, and I will show you things there. Okay, on to the Dungeondraft portion. We now have a blank Dungeondraft instance turned on. So let's go to New. And for the map size, I'm not using a template for this. I'm just going to start out with a base 64 tiles by 64 tiles. And I'm going to make sure that all of my asset packs are selected. Okay, I'm just going to start loading all of those default assets. I've got a bunch of extra things in here just to add some flavor. Okay, so here we go. Blank canvas with a grid on it. So to get the dungeon from Donjon into Dungeondraft, what we're going to do is we're going to hit these 3 little sliders for settings. Then we're going to click Trace Image. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to browse for our file that we just changed in GIMP. Okay, so we have found that file. Let's open that up. And it doesn't fit. Don't panic. There is a scale option. Okay, so we are going to use our scroll wheel to change the size, or we can use this slider bar at the top to change the size. Now, I'm looking at it, and right now I can tell that it is not the right size. So let's zoom in, slide it around a little bit, and you see they don't quite line up. So each of these smaller cubes is 5 feet. Each of these smaller squares is 5 feet. So each of these squares put in by Dungeondraft are also 5 feet. So it needs to scale up quite a lot. And you'll see we're gonna get there pretty quick. So let's keep scaling up, and that's still not there. So let's keep going. Okay, that's almost there. And just last little bit. Okay, so we've got one square about right in one spot. Let's check some other places. Yeah, it's still not quite there. Also, our map has gone off the page. So there are some other things that we can do. So we can go up to the menu, and then we can change the map size, and then we can increase it by, let's say, 20 tiles on each side. And then hit OK. So that's now in the wrong spot, but workable. It's now big enough to actually house our map. Let's continue to scale up until we see this area is about right. It's a little on the big side. A little bit over here, it's a little bit off. So the bigger your image, the more playing with it you're probably going to have to do. And that's actually not like pixel perfect, but if I look at each of the corners, it is close enough that I can draw that. So once we've set our scale, our dungeon is big enough. You know, we got a little bit of border around each side. Not a huge deal. So if, like me, you've got a little bit too much, I can either move this over and I've got a 1 square border all the way around, or you can go back to that change map size and you can put in negative numbers and change that. I'm not gonna do that, but if you are like way too big, you can fix that. Okay, that's good enough for me. Let's go back to the building tool. I've also, on a second screen, got pulled up the PDF. So let's go find room 1. Where is room 1? Room 1 is right here. So the way Donjon numbers rooms is a little bit on the weird side, but that's okay, as long as you can find the right one. We're also going to take a look at the first grouping in the information that we got from Donjon on that PDF. We've got the history. The dungeon was created by a cult of an evil deity as a mine, so we know it's a mine. It was eventually conquered by invaders and was laid empty for many centuries until recently. The walls are superior masonry. We're going to select a wall that looks about like what we want. And then we're going to select a floor. The floors are also called out in that PDF. It says they are hewn stone. So it's cut stone. So I'm going to go with this cut stone. And as far as illumination, we'll get to that later, but I'm going to go ahead and call it out now. It is shadowy with phosphorescent fungus or candles every 20 feet. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to build out room 1. Just draw that square. There we go, got that square. Going to go ahead and draw that corridor and this one and this one. And it's wash, rinse, repeat until done. We're going to do that with everywhere in here. But before we go too far, I'm going to switch over to the wall tool. I'm going to make sure that I select the same wall, and I'm going to drag it across here. So drag it across, double click to finish. I have a wall where there should be a door. You need to do this for every one of your doors. And then we'll go to the portal tool. Now there's a threshold that I like to use for archways. That's got basically the same effect as the dungeon from Donjon. And then for this one here, this is something that we can look up in that PDF. I'm already familiar with the archway, so that's how I knew that's what that was. For room number 1, north entry number 2 is a trapped and locked strong wooden door. So I just need to pick out a decent wooden door from the portals tool, place it, and now I have a door. So I'm going to go ahead and finish drawing out this dungeon, and then I will show you bringing it into Foundry once completed. Or actually, I'm going to do a lot of this dungeon and then come back and show you adding in some of the extra little flair, and then I will show you how to bring it into. Okay, so I have gone through and I have made walls for this entire place. It has walls and it has floors. I have left on the underlay of the map that we got from Donjon, and I'm going to go through and show you how to add a couple of doors and add a little bit in the way of features, and show you how I handle secret doors. So let's take a look at room number 15. If you're following along, it is a there is a circle of tall stones in the south side of the room, and a shattered sword lies in the northwest corner of the room. It's also got some shoulderiths in there. It's got a rune of hypnosis as a trap somewhere in the room, and it's got this secret door here. It's got listed the DC to find, the DC to open, and everything else, including the note that the door is concealed behind a statue of a dread vampire, and it is opened by filling his chalice with blood. Okay, so let's go over to the portal tool, and we are going to take a look at the north entry. It is a stuck simple wooden door. We're going to throw in a stuck simple wooden door, and then taking a look at this, the west entry, which is the secret one, is a trapped and locked simple wooden door. So I've got that simple wooden door in there, and I've got walls around both sides of it. So as a player, you're not really going to notice that there's a join there, but us as DMs will be able to see the secret room on, or the secret door on the back side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to the object tool, and I'm going to look for something like a statue. And let's see, I would like something with a chalice, but it looks like I don't really have one. This guy here. So I'll stick that right where that door should be, and the players will be able to see that as they come into the room. Now let's take a look at where's the here. Stone. I'm gonna look for a pile of stones. Circle of stones. Now that's supposed to be probably a, let's see. It is a basic building hole. It is a circle. Throw that stone circle into the middle of the room, and that's about it. Maybe see if there's a sword. Yeah, there's a broken sword that I can put in the appropriate portion of the room, and that scale is not right. A sword is not like 10 feet. A broken sword is not 10 feet long. So I've also got the scale tool here. So let's change that to 0.5. And now we have a mostly stone or sword shaped or sized sword. Let's see, it lies in the northwest corner of the room. So let's slap that down there. Cool. Next up, we are going to take a look at the lighting. So lighting and illumination from Dungeondraft do come in from here into Foundry. So if we go over to the special effects and we do the light tool, you see we've got a light that we can place down. And I can change the range and the intensity, and I can also adjust that again later in Foundry. So we need an obvious source of light. So let's see, do we have any moss? Because moss was one of the things that could be glowing. See, this is just a regular moss patch. We're going to change it back to full size, and it doesn't quite fit. It wants to snap. So we're going to turn off snapping, and we're going to stick this hunk of moss there. And then we're going to go to the special effects, to the light tool, and we're going to change the range. Let's see, 5 seems to be a lot. Let's give it like a range of 3, and then the intensity of 0.5. So we have a dim light source in room number 5. Okay, we also probably want a few more of those. So let's go back to our object tool, and yes, we still have some moss. So we're going to place down some moss, and then we're going to go add some light to that moss. We now have a dimly lit room, and let me turn off the background. Let's see. So this is what that dungeon is going to look like to the players. Is if it was daytime, this is what it would look. Because in Foundry, you've got daytime and nighttime and all kinds of stuff. So let's go ahead and bring this into Foundry. Now, how do you do that? You go up here to the Export button. We're going to export as Universal VTT. We're just going to export as is. Let's hit Export. We're going to save it in a location. I've got it in my Dungeondraft assets. Actually, that's not really where it needs to go. We'll stick it in D&D resources because that's where I keep my stuff. And we're just going to name it after the Donjon name, Catacombs of Profane Malice. Okay, and what it does is it goes through and it grabs an image of each, as far as I can tell, and then dumps it out. So we now have our file. We're ready to go. So before I go anywhere, and I know I've only done a single room, we're going to hit save. So that saves all the stuff that we put in here, including the lighting. And I will pick you back up once we get into Foundry. Okay, so we now have Foundry pulled up. And yes, I realize it's probably a little bit on the small side. Let's see if we can... I can't scale that. Oh, we're just going to have to deal. So let's go over to the scenes. And we don't actually have the module turned on. Let's go over to Manage Modules. And where's Universal Battle Map Importer? Let's turn that on. Save the settings. And it's going to reload us. And then once we go back over to the Scene button, there's a Universal Battle Map Import down at the bottom right of the screen. Now I can hit that, and then choose a file. In D&D Resources, I have Catacombs of Profane Malice, and it's the DD2VTT, the Dungeondraft file format. Open that up. Import. Okay. It has now loaded into Foundry. Let's back up and see how it came in. We have a small room, the one that we were looking at earlier. You can change the resolution, and it'll take a little bit longer. It'll be a little bit bigger import and all that. You saw a few of those options on the way to export, but this is generally good enough for most of the things that I do. Let's go to the lighting, and let's make it night, because this used to be a mine, so it's going to be dark. And you can see the lighting sources that we set up in Dungeondraft. They actually came over just right. And if I threw a token in there, you'd be able to see with the token's vision and all that. You should be familiar with that if you're using Foundry. So that's done. That's in. So the next thing I want to do is I want to put in some text. So if I put in this new text, I want this to be room 5. So I'm just going to put a 5 in there. And then I'm done with that. I have it. Okay, let's go back to the select tool. And I can move it around. I can right click on it and I can make it invisible to the players. So having numbers in your rooms is probably beneficial to your players. So I would recommend you keep them as visible, but if you don't want your players to see it, you can always make it invisible. And you also lock it in place. So I would go through and do that for each and every room. And then you can use all of your normal Foundry tools to add in your monsters and additional lighting sources if you decide that they're not quite enough of those. But I've got a small chunk of moss on the wall that is emanating light. But yeah, that's really all there is to it. I know it took us a while to get here, but yeah, this is how you get a Donjon map into Foundry. Well, it looks like that's going to do it for us today, guys. I wanted to say thank you for hanging around this long. If you did and you haven't already hit subscribe, please do. Just so you don't miss out on any of the other cool stuff coming on down the road. If you'd like to hang out with us, please hit us up on Discord. Link is in the About section on the channel, or you can go to discord.wonsnot.com, and I will see you guys in the next one.